Good morning and welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to be discussing the new executive order by President Donald Trump, and this will be ending crime and disorder on American streets. Before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and publish the order. This was effective July 24th, 2026. So let me grab that for you guys, and I'm going to publish that in our live chat. You can also find this in the description and comment section below after the video. So government snatchings have begun. And so let me read you some of the requirements for this. And it's a very strong approach to homelessness. You know, we've seen a big change administrative wise in the way they want to fund the federal government and homelessness. So it goes on to say here, by the authority invested in me as president by the Constitution and laws of the United States, it is hereby ordered that treatment and recovery requirements, civil commitment and involuntary treatment, removal of homeless encampments, enforcement of public camping, no loitering, no squatting, and no open drug use. No, and so they're going to move on to transitional housing and supportive service and offering greater involvement by police, courts, hospitals, and treatment facilities. The policy began about 6 days ago on the 24th, and it was entitled Ending Crime and Disorder on American Streets. So the order declares that moving certain homeless people into long-term institutional settings through civil commitment, this will not be by choice, would be able to provide treatment and restore public order. It directs federal agencies to support the states and cities in enforcing this. The enforcement bans, again, public camping, loitering, prohibiting open and drug use and squatting, removing dangerous encampments, expanding outpatient treatment and use of civil commitment for people deemed dangerous and unable to care for themselves, along with moving people into treatment centers and other facilities. So, what this will respectively mean, these are kind of government snatchings. If you're out there and you're presenting as having mental health issues, or you appear to be high or otherwise, then it will allow the United States government to commit you to a facility for drug rehabilitation or mental health services without your consent, okay, for as long as they deem necessary. And so there will be a paddy wagon around the corner. And I don't mean that in a derogatory early mid-century term to the Irish, but realistically, I advise all American citizens at this point, if you're having an emotional day, please do not have outbursts on the sidewalk. Do not talk to yourself in the grocery store because you can be civilly committed for that. Make sure and ensure that you have your Timu wig strapped on appropriately. If you have Timu pumps and you're spinning at the red light and trying to make a fast dollar, I advise you to take that somewhere else because the paddy wagon will make the block and they will snatch your ass for it. So we're 6 days in, and so now it isn't just police departments, the federal government itself. Anybody deemed not acting rationally or normally can be picked up and carried off at this point. So if you're a senior, please talk quietly to yourself. Do not act in a manner that would not be that could be construed in such a way that they can do a snatching on you. Okay, so just be careful with this. Now, clearly, the intent of the law here is to help those that have the most problems out there. And another message that's been sent very clearly through this is if you're homeless and unemployed, they're not going to offer any housing. What they will offer you is an institutional visit followed by drug rehabilitation. And if you complete both processes, they will consider some form of housing for you. So it's, treatment first, housing is a last option, and you may not remain in the city in any form or fashion. So please do not wear your used clothes or other jogging equipment while out, because I don't want anybody at the bus station to be construed as having a mental health issue. Otherwise, you could be subject to a snatching and then dragged, by your wig into the paddy wagon, and it's going to make the block and snatch as many as necessary. You know, um, though I bring light to this, it's an important parallel in our country's history. If you don't have money or means, then it's quite possible that you can you're going to have to complete a number of things before you're deemed fit for society. You may not remain on the sidewalk or at the bus station or even a hospital lobby without contentious action against you. And the U.S. government is now, it's been ordered, so there's no way to unwrap this. We talked about this earlier this year, okay? And to be clear, uh, even I know I've been in the dollar store, I've even been in Walmart. There are lots of people that are employed and that have a life and a family that could be construed mentally, imbalanced. And so this is a cautionary tale of what happens. It becomes kind of dystopian because there's lots of people. Even I'm going to think carefully before my walk from the car to the store, so as not to act irrational or in a way that's subject to arrest and forced commitment, because I'd hate to talk to myself and then get snatched in the wagon, make the block, and then next thing I know, my family is having to call mental institutions to find me because I'm being forced into a drug rehab for talking to myself. So, please reserve your quiet conversations for the shower in your private home. Please pull down your blinds and do that quietly. No public praying that can be construed as mental health issues. And so this is, I don't know how we're going to handle this. In the 80s, we had a very strong mental health budget for the country, and there was great possibility. We shut down a lot of that after the 80s into the 90s. And so where exactly are we going to find the money to put all these people? And I feel that, it's probably they're gonna end up more snatchings for normal people. And I shouldn't say normal, for people, the ordinary people that appear to be homeless because of the way they dress or act. I mean, if anybody's recently visited a dollar store or Dollar General, 4 out of 5 people could probably won't make it from the door before the wagon pulls up and tears off across town. And then next thing you know, you're under a psych evaluation and with no choice. And so how are we going to afford this? It's going to require almost as much money as the war budget in Iran. And for many of you, I mean, it's what do you do? You're going to have to look at the sidewalk and move quietly, because anything constructively construed as mental health, you're gone. You'll get a free ride and a government visit, and it's subject to the court, which means you're not getting out until they deem you fit again. And so watch your ass out there, guys. Look, another problem with this is, with police departments already being aggressive around the country, there's nothing to stop them with acting with impunity, because at this point they can claim anybody's crazy, right? Pull you over. Well, shit, you're not acting rationally. You look a little, you're not dressed appropriately for society. Uh, you appear to be talking to yourself in traffic. Therefore, we're going to seize your car. We're going to throw you, we're going to put you in the cycle unit, and we're going to figure out what's wrong with you. And so I'm concerned that these sweeping actions being ordered can be construed and even abused, and then order and letting the feds do it. Well, man, this is going to be a difficult situation for a lot of the country, um, because there aren't a lot of set of rules here in drug rehab. So we can spend 5 billion on homeless housing, or we can spend about 900 billion trying to put everybody in a psych ward, followed by drug treatment, and then offering them a voucher, despite the fact they already have a home and maybe they're just a little bit off. I didn't know in order to be an American citizen that you had to act completely rational. We all know people in the family that ain't all there. So I'm just wondering how this is going to play out when both the police and the feds get involved. And then, you think hospitals, psychiatric units, do you think hospitals going to want to put this bill? The average person to stay in a psych unit costs around $2,000 to $3,000 a day. Can you imagine keeping somebody for 90 days? We're going to have an epic bill for this, and not to mention drug rehabs. And none of them want no free clients. Drug rehabs want money. I mean, this is a business. Drug rehabs are not designed really. You can get recovery if you can pay for it, kind of deal. The free stuff is a little bit different. It's more like a camp, but I mean, we have to look at what's reasonable and what's not. So I'm curious as to how this is going to be carried out at state and federal level. Any contentious idea that you're, somehow homeless in our country, sitting too long on a park bench, you know, feeding the birds and maybe doing a little talking that, hey, the paddy wagon's going to make the block and your ass is gone. It'll be a government snatching. And so, along with the normal list, when people disappear, you no longer just want to call the police department and the hospital. You also need to call the psychiatric facility now to ensure people have not been snatched there and then put into a program for housing despite owning a home. Um, so, I don't. There's not a lot of languages. Again, let me post a link for this. I mean, obviously, I understand the intent, but the thing about intent is I understand what the executive order explains here, but who's going to actually do the enforcement? Have we ever known the police or the feds to be very reasonable when it comes to enforcing the merit or the law? And so how many congressmen, right, are going to end up in a nut hut? I wonder. Had too many cocktails at Joe's Steakhouse. You walk out, you're doing a little talking to yourself, and next thing you know, a congressman gets snatched by his wig. He's off in the wagon, off to the institution. So I'm wondering how many politicians going to end up getting snatched in this game because I can tell you they're going to be amongst some of the first. I I mean, I know that this is an extreme concept, obviously, but I wanted to show extreme parallels here because it's not about whether or not this has been ordered into the country. It's about the people that will be in charge of making those decisions. And this could, if you have extreme officers or federal agents that have extreme bias against homeless, then you see the concept of being explaining this in extreme or even a humorous way is no longer funny, is it? Because it's not going to be decided by rules of merits. It's simply an open floodgate of this. And so, does that mean that everybody that will be in charge of making those decisions on the street or psychiatrist? Okay, is the local police officer? Is he a psychiatrist? And so, I think you guys are missing really the point here. And this is forced civil commitment. There's no choice. It is not a 3-day hold. It is forced civil commitment and also drug rehab. Even if and there's no mandate in there, so they got to drug test you. If you look high, so you see, and then the people that are first contact here, if they're not a psychiatrist or medical professional, then a lot of people get swept up in this, especially if the subject matter is ambiguous and you're dealing not with paramedic, but police officers and federal agents, are they trained in making determinations of mental health and who's high and who's not? How many people have been arrested for shit they haven't done? So we need to consider all options in this respect because we're rolling in dangerous territory. Oh, looks like we had a Kiki trying to visit. Well, she popped off the chair. If you were watching quickly, she was there. But I mean, so it's good to explore the extreme narrative of this. So let me get in the comments. I'm sure you're going to argue the point, but again, I don't mind arguing points. Okay, but let's not argue amongst ourselves. I don't want to do that this morning. Okay. All right, moving on from here. Let's go to comments and all things weird. Good. A bunch of manics out walking all the time. That's not right. Well, there we go. Robert Ferrero, forced treatment doesn't work. Okay, well, I understand where you're coming from there. Well, Roberta, this is just going to keep us. Well, let's see. You're right. That's happening. Monster goes on to say it was working. It's working people that are homeless as well. Well, that's a contention. Anybody that looks like they are struggling with mental health or otherwise look homeless. It doesn't mean that you need to be proven as materially homeless. It doesn't mean that you need to be proven to be mentally challenged. Okay, police officers and federal agents are not trained or even authorized to make those kind of determinations. That's not part of their degree plan. But since this is an executive order, you can be held. You can be held on suspicion. It's an executive order, is it not? Does anybody want to argue that point? All things weird. The terms will. Well, I'm not quite sure what you're saying there. Kitty Pie, glad I never leave my house. I understand where you're coming from. Dolphin it says, forced institutionalization in a mental hospital saved my life. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad that you're doing better and that things are okay. Robert goes on to say, this sounds like the 1900s asylum and poorhouse. Well, I mean, that was one way of addressing it. Maybe we're looking at that again as a possible solution. But I mean, if we're going to house somebody by virtue of drug rehab and mental institution, is that not more expensive than just simply offering housing first housing programs? You can house a person by again paying the 5 billion, right? Or you can pay at 5,000 a day. Okay, not a couple hundred a day. It's going to cost immensely more to do this through mental hospitals and drug rehabs because these things are not they're not nonprofits. You see my point? It's going to be exponentially more expensive to do it this way. Who's going to want to do this? Is the government going to give out subsidies? And if they do, then how many people are going to be able to fit into an infrastructure we got rid of in the 1980s and early 90s? Where exactly all these people going to go? Psychiatric jail cells? And so that's a concern here. Base citizen millions and millions have already been spent on squandering by state and local officials. They've been caught running scams and scandals. Millions have been lost and recovered recently. That's pretty much how it's always gone. I don't think it's ever changed. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. You look how much was stolen during the pandemic. I'll call that pandemic induced scams. So you're right. Nisi goes on, Lord mercy. Yep, yeah, certainly. I feel your sentiment there. Robert, they'll make more money off of addicts instead of arresting them. Well, I didn't. Addicts don't appear to be the wealthiest people, so I'm not quite sure how they're going to pay for their recovery. It seems to me that go back to the American taxpayer because most drug people that are drug addicted are going from one unit of drug or one hit to the next, right? So $40 isn't going to cover drug rehab, and so my concern there is who's actually going to put this bill. Moving on from there, Jay, you're exaggerating. Well, obviously, obviously, I mean that's part of the commentary, right? I would assume anybody that has suitable mental health can understand that. I'm exasperating some of this, but I mean I think in respect to this video, there are people that could be first responders, could view things in this manner. Not everybody's going to have a fair and balanced view of this, and therefore people will be caught up in this because of extreme ideas and concepts. So I don't think it's that bad to visit both the intent of the order as well as what could happen under extreme in extreme situations. And so, do I believe everybody's going to be snatched? No. Okay, but I think that this is not going to be a perfect plan, and there's been no discussion of who exactly is going to pay for all these treatments. Where does that come from? Does it far exceed the other plan we had in place? So that's the argument here. So moving on from there, base citizen got to start somewhere. Nobody has, let's see, nothing has been done. We can fine tune the process. Well, that's a good material argument. Nothing's been done. Well, I don't know that to be true. I haven't seen anything recently in the news. I mean, it's only been out 6 days, so we'll have to see and what happens at both federal and state level and how this is carried out. We will probably find out soon. I don't think it's going to take much longer than a couple of weeks for us to see some of the beginnings of how this is going to work out nationwide. Um, Fortnite 420 says he should be first in the line of the ward, followed by his family and his cult. Well, I certainly we all welcome to our opinion. I'm not going to share anything on that sentiment. Robert's laughing out loud. Sandra, is that the point snatch and grab for sobriety and drafting? It quite could be. So if anybody needs some free mental health care or drug rehab, we're now offering that. You only need to act suspiciously and hang out near any federal agency or otherwise police department, and you'll get a free ride, obviously to your own care, and you might even be provided housing if you can complete both mental health treatment as well as that. So we have a new health plan in the country. Again, I'm just concerned who's going to pay for this. I know I'm not working day to day to put the bill for mental health bills. Okay, well, we have enough problems out here with inflation and everything else, and I don't think we can split pennies with this. Mitch 77 says some people need the type of treatment none of us can afford. I understand that, so I'm not arguing against that. So anybody wants to go out and act crazy at the local Walmart, and catch a ride in the paddy wagon, be my guest. We're offering free mental health care at this point. There's no line for this, so it should be relatively easy. Call 911 and act crazy and see what happens. Zoomer, send them to the Virgin Islands. We'd love to, but they already stole the budget over there. You remember the $1.9 billion stolen? So they may not be able to house you in anything other than a straw hut. Virgin Islands is out of funding due to fraud. So moving on there, Susan. Trump has a mental disability. Well, I'm not qualified to determine that, but I appreciate your commentary. Uh, Chris, it's all about the money. Well, this is America. We're capitalists. It's always about the money. What else could it possibly be about? We're not running a charity in this country. People don't come here because something, they either come here because it's free or somebody's going to pay for it or otherwise to make money. It's the only two objectives in our nation in capitalism. Either you're going to make money or you're probably going to pay for somebody else that ain't got none. So that's how it goes. Welcome to America. I thought everybody knew that on birthday. The minute your mama popped you on the ass, you started to take your first breath, you're either going to go on to do great things and make lots of money, but in return, you're going to have to give out lots of it through your taxes and then pay for those that ain't got it. So that's how shit works. I thought we all fucking knew that. We teach that in kindergarten now. Have and have not, right? If you're somewhere in between, you could be snatched. Okay. Greetings and thank you, Jay. Well, you're most welcome. So glad to have you in the channel. So it's to my delight to discuss this because I'm as curious as a cat is what's going to happen. Okay, because I know lots of people in my family. We're going to have to put. I'm going to seriously. I'm going to have to put an Apple tag in half my family members' shoes because I feel like there's going to be a snatching. Okay, so please, if you're visiting the local Wally or you're going to go down to the dollar store, please keep your shit together. Don't talk to yourself. No prayers in public because there could be a government snatching. All right. And so, and again, we're offering free mental health care and drug rehab. If anybody's struggling, all you need to do is just pop your Timu wig off at the red light, do a little shakedown at the red light, and they will carry you off into the wind. And in the end, as a treat, you will be rewarded with some housing. Again, I don't know how or who's going to pay for this, but when I pay my tax at the end of the year, I will be accounting for every copper penny because I ain't got money to waste. All right. If I got to pay for it, then I'm going to go pretend like I got a drug problem. That way I can get some free housing because this shit here, somebody gonna pay for this. All right. Same way we have wars, we pop bombs, it costs millions. Somebody gonna pay for this. And I need to know who. I need to know how many nickels and pennies are gonna come out of my check over this. So, anyways, I'm sorry, but the obvious is obvious, like the fraud. Well, that's always a common topic in the country because again, we go back to have not, and sometimes have nots commit fraud. So do the people that have a lot. So sometimes people make money and want more and then they commit fraud. Sometimes people got nothing and they commit fraud because they ain't got shit. So both sides of the plate play the same rules when it comes to fraud. It's always opportunity. Opportune. Moving on from there, intuitively wise. They pay for the immigrants' housing. Well, now the immigrants, boy, just double bubble for immigrants. If you're here illegally, you will need to first go to the psych ward. Number two, you will go through drug rehab. Then we will offer you free housing and the immigration center, followed by a flight out of the country. But at least you will be recovered and you will be mentally healthy when we drop you off at 30,000 feet out the plane for a free flight in the back row. Okay. So there won't be a quick exit out the country. You need to complete several processes. Moving on there to Tutorly Wise. Yep. All right, guys. Well, again, part of the video was to bring light to this. Obviously, I've used some extreme examples. I didn't feel like talking to this in monotone. I wanted to stimulate some of your minds. I understand that this may be carried out more civilly than I'm suggesting in the video. Okay, I think that's common sense, but I really do encourage you guys to take a look at the order and consider your options as a taxpayer. Are we going to be left hanging with this bill? Who's going to pay for it? Where are these people going to go? And will it achieve the desired result? This is not a challenge to the president or his administration. He's simply doing what he's supposed to do in his office, and that's make decisions. We people voted. This is the decisions that are made at that time. So you cannot argue that. If we don't want it that way, then people should have voted differently, and so on. I'm not going to argue politics in the channel, but here we have an executive order. If you look homeless, if you have mental health problems, if you got drug problems, you're in a category under this order that could potentially see civil commitment, forced drug rehab, and you will be rewarded with housing if you can act in a normal and rational manner, as according to the executive order. That is the reality that we're discussing. Now, whether or not the police, first responders, the judge uh, are biased or unbiased, or whether they think it's a good idea or not, who knows? They're not trained psychiatrists. They are not trained in drug rehab, but they deal with a lot of criminal activities that involve these things. So I understand the sentiment of this new policy ending crime and disorder on American streets. I hope very much that happens. I think a great example of that is when we have FIFA in town. We have all these European, Scottish, Irish, and all that in the country, and they had such a curated experience, right? They were out there in New York and other major cities and going down the streets, and they were even allowed to drink in the streets when normally Americans couldn't do stuff like that. And so they had this curated idea of how great America is. But I don't think that all that money spent in those cities to receive all those people, that Europe and the Irish and everybody else got a real curated view of what America really is. I don't think they saw us as everyday Americans. They got a very curated and paid for experience. And so I would invite my European friends and all the other nations back when we're not dumping billions of dollars into entertainment, and then see America day to day, the life, the real working America. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Let me move back to comments and I'm going to wrap it up. Again, these are my opinions, okay? I'm not an economist, I'm not a psychiatrist, and I'm not a political columnist, okay? I'm sharing my opinions, and you don't have to accept them or agree with them. I certainly don't want to argue about them. I'm just bringing to light some of the potentials, whether extreme or not. So moving on from there, let's see. Zoomer, send them to the Virgin Islands. Susan, Trump. Okay, we already went over that. Chris, all about the money. Robert, the government will end up paying for rehabs. That's certainly a possibility. YouTube 1970, greetings and thank you, Jay. Well, you're most welcome. Susan, sorry about the obvious is the obvious, like fraud. Okay, I can see how that might work out. Intuitively wise says they pay immigrants in housing, food, shelter. Okay, well, some might agree with that as well. Thank you for the information. Says infinite possibilities. And Susan, as long as it's a government program, they will make it political. Well, that's part of being America. We politicize everything, right? That's just part of the game. When you wake up, that's just part of it. And last but least, before I wrap up the video, is going to be Thomas. I studied homeless for years and become homeless to understand it. Not happy about the outcome and forcing people to work. Remember, people are humans and nothing more than an experiment. Well, it's there are those that are the victors and those that are not. The wars are always remembered by the people that win. This is the rationalized version of a war on homelessness, and to eliminate the process of people dangling on the streets that are high, may be considered having a mental health issue that needs to be addressed. So I hope that America and the people that are in charge of the front line of this make responsible decisions in terms of dealing with homeless and those drug addicted and so on. Okay, not on the basis of your politics, but just on the basis of human nature. Do what's kind, but also respect and honor the laws that are written in this country for a reason. That being said, guys, I've enjoyed talking with you today, sharing some ideas and even extreme ideas. But again, at the end of the day, it's up to you to arrive at your own conclusions and decisions regarding both federal and state programs and whether you have a problem or somebody you know. I've enjoyed talking with you guys today and hope to see you again in a couple of days. We do lives on Tuesday, Thursdays and Sundays around 10 a.m. Central Standard. I do a lot of EDUs or educational videos twice a day, virtually every day of the week until I'm tired of it. And so we hope to see you at some point. Stay subscribed if you'd like to hear more what I've got to say, and have a wonderful week. Bye for now.